She jumped into a raging river to save two babies, unaware one of them was the Duke's secret heir. The storm struck Devon without mercy in the spring of 1847. It had been falling for 3 days straight, and the River Dart had swollen beyond anything Gloria P. Stalker had seen in her 28 years. The water churned brown and furious, claiming the lower pastures, dragging fence posts and garden gates downstream like toys. Gloria stood at the window of her stone cottage, one hand pressed against the cold glass, watching the river rise with terrifying speed. She did not know when it would stop, but she felt it in her chest. It was coming closer, inch by relentless inch. She held a bundle of dried herbs in her arms, yet her thoughts were fixed on the bridge downstream that connected the village to the main road. Should she try to reach the village before the bridge gave way? The last 14 months alone had taught her to decide quickly. Since she had buried her husband, pulled from the sea 3 days after the storm that took him, there was no one left to choose for her. It was only her now, set against the world. Then came the sound, wood splintering, something massive breaking apart. Gloria dropped the herbs and ran to the door. The cursed bridge had collapsed, and caught in the wreckage was something else. A black lacquered carriage, elegant and completely out of place on this rural road, tipped sideways into the torrent, being dragged by the current. The wind offered no mercy, and the water was already lapping at the foundation stones when Gloria stepped into the sodden garden without hesitation. Her boots sank into the mud, but she kept going when she heard it. Crying, weak, nearly smothered by the roar of the storm, but unmistakable. The sound of infants in terror. Gloria waded in up to her knees, the cold cutting straight through her wool skirts. The current tugged at her legs, trying to pull her under, but she could not stop. Not now. Not when babies were crying. She seized the edge of the carriage, her fingers shaking, wood splinters biting into her palms. Inside, visible through the shattered window, were two babies wrapped in soaked blankets, rocking helplessly in a woven basket, their faces red with terror. And beside them, slumped across the seat, a man. Unconscious. Blood streaming from a deep gash on his forehead, more blood soaking his fine coat from a wound she could not yet see. Without thinking, Gloria grabbed the basket holding the babies. She pressed it tight against her chest and fought her way back through the water, pushing against the current with every ounce of strength she possessed. The babies cried louder, frightened by the motion and the cold. The water dragged at her heavy skirts, pulling her sideways. She stumbled, slipped on the muddy riverbed, nearly went down, but she would not let herself fall, could not. When she finally reached the bank, she set the basket down carefully on higher ground, well clear of the rising water. The babies were safe. She was not finished. Gloria turned at once and went back toward the carriage. The wood groaned against the rocks holding it in place. She heard the sharp crack of timber giving way. The river was about to claim everything. She stepped into the current again, deeper this time, the water reaching her waist. It struck her hard, nearly knocked her from her feet. She grabbed the man by the collar of his fine coat and pulled with an effort that set her arms on fire. He was heavy, limp, dead weight. He slid free of the carriage and fell straight into the water, but the current seemed to help, lifting his body just enough. Gloria caught him by the shoulders and began to drag him, step by agonizing step, toward the shore. The river rose higher, pounding against her ribs now, trying to sweep them both away. Every movement tested her strength. She stumbled and fell to one side, water closing over her head for one terrible moment, then forced herself up again, dragging him with her. She could not stop. Not now. At last she felt cold grass beneath her feet and saw the bank ahead. She hauled him up beside her, her muscles screaming in protest, lungs burning. The babies were only a few yards away, still crying, and the sound gave her strength. Gloria looked back just in time to see the carriage tear free from the rocks. It It was swept away in an instant, vanishing around the bend of the river, just as the horses and the driver, already drowned, she was certain, had before it. She stood there gasping, staring at the babies, at the unconscious man, her whole body trembling. The rain had eased slightly, thinning into a steady drizzle, but the ground remained heavy and treacherous beneath her feet. Gloria lifted the basket again and moved farther from the river, climbing the slope with careful steps toward her cottage. The wind still cut through her sodden clothes, carrying the scent of wet earth and danger. The baby's cries had softened, worn thin with exhaustion and cold, yet the sound tore at the silence of the empty valley. Each step felt longer than the last. The weight of the basket burned her arms. When she finally reached the stone path that led to her cottage door, she sank to her knees and set the basket down on the covered porch, quickly pulling her own shawl free to cover the baby's, though both the shawl and her dress were soaked and cold. Then she turned back to the man. He lay where she had left him at the base of the slope, unmoving in the drizzle. Water streamed down his face, mixing with blood from the gash on his head. His fine clothes, a gentleman's traveling coat, expensive boots, were ruined, caked with mud and river water. Gloria did not hesitate. She walked back down the slope, took hold of his shoulders and pulled again. It took her 3 attempts to drag him up the path. By the time she reached the cottage, her hands were raw and her breath came in ragged gasps. She managed to haul him through the doorway and onto the worn rug before her fireplace, then collapsed beside him for a moment, chest heaving. The babies cried. Gloria forced herself to stand. First things first. She grabbed the basket, brought the infants inside, and set them near the dying embers of the morning fire. She added wood with shaking hands, coaxed the flames higher, then carefully unwrapped the soaked blankets from the babies. Twin boys, perhaps 6 or 8 months old, identical as far as she could tell, both with dark hair plastered to their tiny heads, both with fine features and skin too pale from cold. They wore expensive gowns, the kind of baby clothes Gloria had only ever seen on the squire's grandchildren. Nobility. These babies were nobility. And so, she realized as she turned to examine the unconscious man, was he? Gloria knelt beside him, her midwife's training taking over. She checked his breathing first, shallow but steady. Then she examined his wounds. The head gash was deep but clean, would need stitching. But when she unbuttoned his coat and waistcoat, searching for the source of the blood soaking his side, she found something that made her hands still. A knife wound. Deliberate, aimed between his ribs. Defensive wounds across his palms and forearms. Bruising on his throat, as if someone had tried to strangle him. These injuries had not come from the carriage accident. Someone had tried to kill him. Gloria sat back on her heels, staring at the man's unconscious face, strong features, perhaps 30 years old, a thin scar along his jaw from some old wound. His hands, when she examined them more closely, bore the calluses of a man who had held a sword, who had perhaps killed. What had she brought into her home? The babies cried louder, demanding attention. Gloria pushed her questions aside. She worked quickly, stripping the man of his wet clothes, covering him with blankets, then turning to the infants. They needed feeding, warmth, dry clothes, none of which she had. She improvised. Goat's milk, warmed carefully over the fire. Clean linen torn into makeshift nappies. Her own nightdress, far too large, wrapped around both babies to keep them warm. They drank greedily from the rag she'd soaked in milk, their tiny hands grasping at her fingers. "Shh," she murmured, rocking them. "You're safe now. You're safe." But even as she said it, Gloria looked at the locked door, at the man lying unconscious by her fire. at the expensive signet ring on his finger bearing a crest she did not recognize, and wondered if any of them were truly safe at all. Outside, the rain began to fall harder once more. The river roared in the distance, swallowing the world, and Gloria P. Stalker, 28-year-old widow and midwife, sat alone in her cottage with 2 noble babies and a man someone had tried to murder, wondering what she had done. Gloria worked by firelight, her hands steady despite the tremor in her chest. She had stitched wounds before, farmers, caught on fence wire, children who'd fallen on sharp stones, a woman torn during a difficult birth. But never this. Never a deliberate knife wound aimed to kill. The man lay unconscious while she threaded the curved needle, the kind she used for the worst tears. The gash on his forehead took 12 stitches, precise and small. She worked quickly, wiping away blood with clean linen, her fingers remembering the rhythm even as her mind raced. When she cleaned the knife wound at his side, she found it had missed the vital organs by inches. Either his attacker had been interrupted or the man had fought back hard enough to deflect the blade. The defensive cuts on his palms suggested the latter. These were the hands of someone who had held a sword, who knew violence, who might have killed. The babies began crying again, their thin wails cutting through her concentration. Gloria tied off the final stitch, bandaged the man's torso, and turned to them. They lay in the basket near the fire, swaddled in her nightdress, their faces red and desperate. She had no milk, no bottles, no proper nappies or clothes that would fit infants this small. Gloria grabbed her shawl and slipped out into the drizzle, running to her neighbor's farm a quarter-mile up the road. Old Meg kept goats. Gloria pounded on the door until the woman answered, bleary-eyed and suspicious. "My cousin's wife died in childbed," Gloria lied, the words coming easier than they should. "Left twin boys. I need milk, please." Meg studied her for a long moment, then nodded and fetched a jug. Gloria paid her with the last coins in her pocket and hurried back through the rain. The man had not moved. The babies screamed louder. Gloria warmed the goat's milk carefully, testing it against her wrist the way she'd seen mothers do. She soaked clean rags in the warm liquid and let the babies suck, their tiny mouths working frantically. They drank as if starving, and perhaps they were. How long had they been trapped in that carriage? As she fed them, she noticed the small differences. One had a faint birthmark behind his left ear, shaped like a crescent moon. That one seemed quieter, more watchful. The other cried louder, demanded more. Edmund and Sebastian, she decided, though she had no idea which name the man would have chosen for which child. Dawn came grey and cold. Gloria checked the man's wounds again. No fresh bleeding, no signs of fever yet. She checked his pockets, found nothing but a handkerchief with an embroidered crest she didn't recognize. The signet ring on his finger bore the same design, but told her nothing useful. The bridge was gone. She'd seen the wreckage from her window. Even if the man woke, even if he could travel, they were trapped here. The river had cut them off completely. It would be days, perhaps weeks, before anyone could cross, which meant whoever had tried to kill him might still be looking, might assume he'd drowned, or might come to make certain of it. Gloria stood and walked to the chest where she kept her dead husband's things. At the bottom, wrapped in oilcloth, was his shotgun and a box of shells. She loaded it with hands that no longer trembled, then set it against the wall by the door, where she could reach it quickly. The babies slept, finally, exhausted. The man breathed steadily, his face pale but peaceful. Outside, the rain had stopped, but the river still roared, swollen and angry. Gloria sat in her chair with the shotgun across her lap, watching the door, watching the windows, watching the man who might be salvation or damnation. She did not sleep. She simply waited for whatever would come next. The man woke near midnight with a sharp intake of breath, his hand flying to his side where the knife wound lay beneath Gloria's careful bandaging. His eyes opened wild and unfocused, searching the unfamiliar room, until they found her sitting in the chair by the fire, one of the babies asleep against her shoulder. "The boys," he gasped, trying to rise. Gloria stood quickly, crossed to him, and pressed him back down with one firm hand. "They're safe, both of them. Lie still, or you'll tear the stitches." He stared at her for a long moment, as if trying to understand where he was, how he'd gotten here. Then his gaze swept the modest cottage, the rough-hewn beams, the simple furnishings, and something shifted in his expression. Calculation, perhaps, or caution. "My name is Frederick Stone," he said, his voice hoarse. "I'm a traveling merchant. The storm caught us on the road. The bridge—" "Don't lie to me," Gloria cut him off, her tone sharp. "I've stitched your wounds and undressed you. I've seen the signet ring you wear, the quality of your clothes, the way you speak. Merchants don't travel with babies in lacquered carriages worth more than my cottage." His jaw tightened. For a moment she thought he might continue the pretense, but then something in his face crumbled. Exhaustion, perhaps, or desperation. "All right," he whispered, "but the less you know, the safer you'll be. I pulled you from a flooded river with knife wounds in your side. I'm already involved." He closed his eyes briefly, then opened them again. "The boys are mine. Their mother, my wife. She died 2 years ago. Childbirth. They're all I have left." Gloria heard the grief in his voice, recognized it. She said nothing, waiting. "Someone ambushed us on the road," he continued. 4 men. Professional. They killed the driver, cut the horses loose. I tried to fight, but—" He gestured weakly at his wounds. "We went into the river. I thought we were dead." "Who were they?" "I don't know their names. But they'll come back." His eyes locked on hers, suddenly urgent. "When they don't find our bodies, they'll come looking. They'll want to confirm we're dead." "Why?" Gloria demanded. "Why would anyone want to kill you and your children?" He opened his mouth to answer, but suddenly his body went rigid. His eyes rolled back and he began to shake, fever seizing him with terrible swiftness. Gloria dropped to her knees beside him, pressing her hand to his forehead, burning hot. "No," she whispered. "Not now. Not before you tell me what's coming." But he was already lost to delirium, mumbling words she couldn't make out. She worked through the night, cooling his fever, keeping the babies quiet, listening to every sound outside the cottage. When dawn finally came grey and cold through the windows, Gloria stood and walked to the door. She locked it, checked the latch twice. Then she crossed to the chest where her husband's things were stored and pulled out the pistol he'd kept for protection on his trading voyages. Her hands did not shake as she loaded it. She had buried 1 man already. She would not let whoever was hunting this stranger bring death to her door without a fight. Frederick's fever came on fast during the second night. Gloria woke to the sound of him thrashing, calling out names she could not quite catch. Isabella, Edmund, Sebastian. Words tumbled together in delirium. She lit a candle and found him burning hot, his face flushed and slick with sweat. The knife wound had begun to fester despite her careful cleaning. For 2 days, she barely left his side. She bathed his forehead with cool water, forced willow bark tea between his cracked lips, changed his bandages when the fever made him sweat through them. The babies cried, and she tended them between doses of medicine, learning to move in a constant rhythm. Feed Frederick, check the twins, change bandages, feed the babies, start again. It was during one of these hurried feedings that she noticed the small birthmark behind one twin's left ear, a tiny crescent moon shape. That became her way of telling them apart. The one with the mark fussed less, watched her with solemn eyes. The other cried louder, demanded more attention. Edmund and Sebastian, she called them in her mind, though Frederick had never spoken their true names. She found herself talking to them as she worked. "Your papa is strong," she murmured while warming milk. "He'll come back to you. I promise." The words felt like a vow she had no right to make. On the third night, Frederick's fever spiked dangerously. His entire body shook with violent chills. No amount of blankets could stop. His teeth chattered so hard, she feared he would bite his tongue. Gloria tried everything. More blankets, heated stones wrapped in cloth, tea she could barely get him to swallow. Nothing worked. Finally, desperate, she made a choice that would have scandalized anyone who knew. She lay down beside him on the narrow pallet near the fire, pressed her body against his trembling form, and wrapped her arms around him. "I'm here," she whispered against his shoulder. "You're not alone." His shaking gradually subsided. His breathing steadied. After what felt like hours, he turned into her embrace, still unconscious, and murmured something that sounded like, "Don't leave me." Gloria's throat tightened. "I won't," she promised, though she knew he could not hear her. "I won't leave you." She woke at dawn to find his fever broken and his eyes open, staring at her with confusion, and something else she could not name. They lay there for a heartbeat, her arm still across his chest, his face inches from hers, before Gloria pulled away as if burned. "You had a fever," she said, her voice too sharp. "I was keeping you warm. Nothing more." Frederick nodded slowly, wincing as he tried to sit up. "Thank you." The awkwardness stretched between them like a physical thing. Gloria stood quickly, busying herself checking his bandages with hands that trembled slightly. She could still feel the warmth of him, the steady rhythm of his breathing against her cheek. "Your name," she said finally, not looking at him. "Your real name." "Frederick Stone." "You're lying." She met his eyes then. "I'm not a fool. Those clothes cost more than I'll earn in 5 years. That ring on your finger bears a crest I don't recognize, and someone tried to murder you. So tell me the truth." He held her gaze for a long moment, and she saw the calculation behind his exhaustion, the weighing of trust against danger. "No." "Why?" "Because if men come looking, and they will, you need to be able to tell them truthfully that you don't know who I am." His voice hardened. "You found the carriage empty, half submerged. You pulled what you could from the water. You never saw anyone alive. Can you remember that?" Gloria thought of her husband, of the lies she had told the creditors after his death, of how easily deception could become truth in the telling. "Yes, I can lie convincingly." "Good." Frederick leaned back against the wall, closing his eyes. Pain etched lines around his mouth. "If they ask what I said, tell them I was delirious. Tell them I spoke of death and drowning. Tell them anything except the truth." "And what is the truth?" He opened his eyes, and she saw something bleak and dangerous there, something that made her understand why someone might want him dead. "That I'm someone who should be dead. Nothing more." Gloria woke to a sound that stopped her heart. Edmund crying, but wrong. Not the angry wail of hunger or discomfort, but a weak, frightening mewl that spoke of something deeper. She was beside him in seconds, her hand on his tiny forehead. Burning hot. "No," she whispered. "No, no, no." Frederick stirred from his pallet, still weak but healing. "What is it?" "Fever." The word came out flat, hollow. Gloria had seen this before. The blacksmith's daughter, barely a year old, the vicar's twin boys, all dead within days of the first fever. In babies this young, it can turn deadly very fast. Frederick's face went white. He struggled to his feet, swaying slightly. "What do we do?" Gloria forced herself to think past the terror clawing at her chest. "Cold compresses. Willow bark tea. Just drops at a time. And we pray." She worked through the night with Frederick beside her, neither speaking except in terse instructions. Gloria bathed Edmund's tiny body in cool water, while Frederick held Sebastian, who had begun to fret, sensing something wrong. She prepared the medicine with shaking hands, managed to get a few precious drops past Edmund's lips. The hours crawled past. Edmund's breathing grew labored, his small chest rising and falling too fast. Gloria held him against her shoulder, rocking gently, singing soft Devon lullabies her own mother had once sung to her. Frederick watched her, his expression raw. "Isabella died giving birth to them," he said suddenly, his voice rough. "The labor went on too long. The doctors said they were too small, that she was too weak. She hemorrhaged. I held her hand and watched her slip away, and there was nothing I could do." Gloria looked up at him, still rocking Edmund. "My husband drowned at sea 14 months ago. Storm came up fast off the coast. I begged him not to sail that day. I had a feeling something cold in my bones. He laughed and kissed my forehead and told me not to worry." Her voice cracked. "They found his body 3 days later, washed up on the rocks near Dartmouth. You blame yourself. Every single day." She pressed her lips to Edmund's hot forehead. "I should have stopped him. Should have done more than just ask. Should have." "Should have doesn't bring them back," Frederick said quietly. He moved closer, reaching out to touch Edmund's tiny hand. "I tell myself that every morning. It doesn't help." They sat in silence then, united in their vigil and their grief. Gloria continued to bathe Edmund, to coax drops of medicine into him, to sing when words failed. Frederick held Sebastian, who had finally fallen into fitful sleep, and watched Gloria with an expression she could not quite read. As dawn approached, Gloria felt Edmund's forehead again, still hot, but not burning. His breathing had slowed, deepened. She checked him carefully. Pulse steadier, color slightly better. "He's through the worst," she whispered, hardly daring to believe it. "He'll be all right." Frederick closed his eyes, and she saw his lips move in what might have been prayer or simply relief. "Thank God," he breathed. Then, opening his eyes to look at her, "You saved him. You saved all of us." Gloria felt tears finally fall, tears she had held back through the endless night. "That's my job," she said, her voice breaking. "Bringing children safely through the dark. It's all I know how to do." Frederick saw through her then, saw the pain beneath the competence. "You never had children of your own." "No." The word was barely a whisper. "And I never will." He reached out, covered her hand with his. "That seems impossibly unfair." Gloria looked down at Edmund, sleeping peacefully now, against her chest, then at Sebastian, cradled in Frederick's arms, then at Frederick himself, wounded, mysterious, dangerous, and yet somehow the most honest person she had spoken 2 in months. It had been a long time since she had felt needed, and with a quiet ache in her chest, she realized she did not want that moment to end. A week passed, and something shifted between them. Something Gloria tried not to examine too closely. They fell into an unspoken routine. Gloria rose early to milk the neighbor's goat, always claiming the milk was for herself, never mentioning the babies or the injured man hidden in her cottage. Frederick, growing stronger each day, learned to change nappies while Gloria prepared breakfast. He was terrible at it initially, all aristocratic fumbling, and the sound of his frustrated cursing made her laugh despite herself. They traded shifts with the twins. One would sleep while the other watched. Small intimacies accumulated, Frederick carrying water from the well when Gloria's arms ached, Gloria mending the tear in his shirt with careful stitches, their hands brushing as they passed Edmund between them. Gloria visited her father's farm one afternoon, returning with eggs and flour and her father's questions about why she needed so much food. She lied easily, invented a story about preserving for winter, and hated how natural the deception felt. That evening, standing at the window, she watched the river. The water had begun to recede, pulling back to reveal muddy banks and broken fence posts. The road would be passable soon. "You'll be able to leave in a few days," she said quietly. Frederick stood behind her, close enough that she could feel the warmth of him. "Gloria, there's something I need to tell you." She turned to face him. His expression was grave, decided. "My name is Frederick Morano. I'm the Duke of Ashbourne." He said it flatly, without pride. "My estates are in Hampshire. My wife Isabella died 2 years ago, bringing the twins into the world, and 3 weeks ago my half-brother Garrett tried to have me murdered." Gloria stared at him, processing. A duke. Of course he was. It explained everything. The fine clothes, the expensive carriage, the assassins willing to kill him in broad daylight. "Garrett is my father's illegitimate son," Frederick continued. "Acknowledged, but not titled. If I die, if the twins die, everything passes to him. The dukedom, the estates, the fortune. He's been planning this since Isabella's death, I'm certain. He just needed to wait until the twins were old enough to travel, until he could eliminate all 3 of us at once." "You have proof?" "Some. Not enough. Not yet." His jaw tightened. "I overheard him speaking with his solicitor. I know money changed hands. One of the men who attacked us was Garrett's former groom, but I need more before I can go to the authorities. If I accuse him without undeniable evidence, he'll destroy what little I have and finish what he started." Gloria's mind raced through the implications. "So you can't go home? Can't show yourself publicly? Can't—" "I'm dead, as far as anyone knows. The carriage went into the river. No, bodies were recovered. Garrett will wait a decent interval, then petition to be declared my heir. By the time anyone questions it, he'll control everything." Frederick moved closer. "Gloria, I need time. Time to gather proof, to find allies I can trust. But I can't ask you to—" "Stay here," she said. He blinked. "What?" "Stay here. Hide here. No one would think to look for a duke in a midwife's cottage. The village barely notices me as it is." The words came faster now, conviction building. "You'll heal properly. You'll have time to plan, and the twins will be safe. It's too dangerous. If Garrett finds out, then we make certain he doesn't." Gloria lifted her chin. "I've kept secrets before, Your Grace. I know how to lie convincingly." Frederick studied her face, and she saw something kindle in his eyes. Gratitude, yes, but also something warmer, more dangerous. "You don't have to do this." "I know." She glanced at the twins. sleeping peacefully in their basket by the fire. But I'm choosing to. He reached for her hand, squeezed it gently. Thank you. Gloria lay awake that night, listening to Frederick's breathing from across the room, to the small sounds of the babies stirring. She stared at the ceiling and acknowledged what she had been avoiding for days. She had made 2 mistakes, agreeing to hide them and beginning to care. Gloria discovered the truth 3 days later, purely by accident. She was mending Frederick's coat. The fine wool could be salvaged despite the mud and blood, when she found the inner pocket torn and empty. "Your cufflinks," she said absently. "Did you lose them in the river?" Frederick's silence made her look up. His expression was carefully neutral, which meant he was hiding something. "What did you do?" He set down the cup of tea he'd been drinking. "I sent a letter 2 weeks ago, when you went to the village for supplies. There was a courier passing through. I paid him with one of my cufflinks to carry a message to London." Gloria's hands stilled on the coat. "You did what?" "I contacted the Earl of Devon. We served together in the military. He's trustworthy, discreet. I asked him to investigate Garrett quietly, to gather proof." Frederick spoke quickly, defensively. "I had to do something, Gloria. I couldn't just hide here forever." "Without telling me?" Her voice rose. "If they trace that letter, if Garrett has people watching for exactly this kind of communication—" She stood abruptly, the coat falling to the floor. "You've put us all at risk. The courier doesn't know who I am or where I'm staying. I only told him to return here if there was a reply." "Here?" Gloria felt ice flood her veins. "You told him to come here? To my cottage?" She crossed to the window, staring out at the dark road. "If they follow him, if they're watching—" She spun back to face him. "How could you make that choice without asking me?" "I was trying to protect you by not involving you. I'm already involved." The words came out sharp, furious. "The moment I pulled you from that river, I became involved. You don't get to make decisions about my safety without consulting me." They stared at each other, both breathing hard. Then Gloria grabbed her shawl. "I need air." She walked along the riverbank in the darkness, trying to control her fear and anger. Frederick was right. They needed proof, needed help. But the unilateral decision, the risk to her home, to the twins. When she returned an hour later, she found Frederick teaching Sebastian to grasp his finger. Both twins were fascinated by their father, reaching for him with tiny hands. The sight broke something in her chest. "I'm sorry," Frederick said quietly, not looking up. "You're right. I should have told you." Gloria sank into the chair across from him. "When will the courier return?" "I don't know. If there's no reply, he won't come at all." 3 days passed in tense waiting. Then, at midnight, a sharp knock at the door made them both freeze. Gloria grabbed the pistol. Frederick took the twins to the back room. She approached the door carefully. "Who's there?" "Courier, ma'am. From London. I have a reply for the gentleman." The man was young, nervous, mud-splattered from hard riding. Frederick paid him with Gloria's late husband's pocket watch, the only valuable thing left in the cottage, and sent him away quickly. The letter bore the Earl of Devon's seal. Frederick broke it with shaking hands. Gloria watched his face as he read, saw hope, war with dread. "What does it say?" "He found them. 2 of the assassins. 1 agreed to testify in exchange for clemency." Frederick's voice was rough with emotion. "There's documentation. Payments from accounts linked to Garrett. Written orders from his solicitor. Testimony from the servant who arranged the ambush. Everything we need. That's good. I have to go to London. Now. Frederick looked up at her. Garrett is preparing to have me declared legally dead. If that happens before I can present this evidence, he inherits everything and it becomes irrelevant. The Earl says I have less than 2 weeks. Gloria's throat tightened. Take the boys. The road is too dangerous. If anything happened then leave them with me. The words came without thought, but she meant them. I'll keep them safe until you return. Frederick crossed to her, cupped her face with both hands. That could be weeks. You'd be trapped here, unable to leave them, unable to... I know how to care for infants, Frederick. It's what I do. She covered his hands with hers. And I trust you to come back. His eyes searched hers. Then he leaned forward and kissed her forehead, lingering. 2 weeks, he whispered. 3 at most. I swear I'll come back. At dawn, Gloria stood in the doorway holding both twins while Frederick mounted the borrowed horse. He looked back at them, his sons, and the woman who had saved them all. Take care of them, he said. I will. Then he was gone, riding toward London and whatever waited there, leaving Gloria alone with 2 babies and a heart that felt dangerously full. The first night was the hardest. Edmund and Sebastian cried for their father, that particular wail of confusion and abandonment that tore at Gloria's heart. She walked the floor with them, one in each arm, singing until her voice grew hoarse. Shh, my loves. Shh, my boys. Your papa will come back. I promise he will. The words felt like lies even as she spoke them. 2 weeks passed with no word. Gloria established a new routine, feeding, changing, washing endless nappies, singing the same lullabies over and over. She talked to the twins constantly, told them stories about their father's bravery, about London and grand houses they would one day see. She did not let herself think about what Frederick's silence might mean. 3 weeks. Gloria heard rumors in the village, something about a noble dispute in London, accusations of conspiracy, a duke returned from the dead. Her heart raced every time someone mentioned it, but she kept her face carefully neutral, asked no questions that might draw attention. That same week she saw riders on the road, well-dressed men on fine horses, moving slowly, watching. Gloria kept the twins inside, shuttered the windows, and gripped the pistol until her hands ached. The riders moved on, but the fear remained. 4 weeks. Gloria stopped jumping at every sound. She stopped watching the road. She accepted what she had been avoiding. Frederick was not coming back. Dead, imprisoned, or simply returned to his real life and decided the risk of retrieving 2 infants was too great. The babies were hers now. Edmund, with his solemn eyes, and Sebastian with his demanding cries. Her sons, even if the law and society would never recognize them as such. She would manage somehow. She always had. But late at night, after the twins finally slept, Gloria allowed herself to grieve. Not just for the man she had nursed back to health, but for something deeper, more dangerous. At some point, without noticing, without meaning to, she had begun to feel something for him. Something that went beyond gratitude or duty, or even friendship. She had begun to love him. And now, he was gone. Week 5 arrived with cold rain and grey skies. Gloria was hanging laundry when she heard it. Hoofbeats on the muddy road, coming fast. Her heart stopped. She dropped the wet sheet and ran inside, grabbing the pistol, pulling the twins' basket behind the table. Through the window, she watched a single rider approach. Then she saw his face. Gloria was through the door before she could think, running across the muddy yard with the pistol still in her hand. Frederick dismounted before his horse fully stopped, and then she was in his arms, or he was in hers, she couldn't tell, both of them holding on with desperate relief. "You came back," she gasped against his chest. "You came back. Did you doubt me?" His voice was rough, exhausted. "Every single day." Frederick pulled back just enough to see her face, his hands framing it, thumbs brushing away tears she hadn't realized were falling. "I'm sorry. I couldn't send word. Any communication might have led them here. I had to wait until it was truly over." "Is it? Over?" "Garrett is in the Tower of London awaiting trial. The evidence was overwhelming. The Prince Consort himself heard my testimony." Frederick's smile was weary but genuine. "He'll hang for what he tried to do." Gloria felt her knees weaken with relief. "The twins. They've been asking for you. Well, crying for you. Same thing. Can I see them?" She led him inside, watched as he knelt beside the basket where Edmund and Sebastian slept. He touched their faces with shaking hands, and Gloria saw tears slide down his cheeks. "Thank you," he whispered. "Thank you for keeping them safe." They sat together as the rain fell outside. Frederick holding one twin while Gloria held the other, both of them simply breathing, simply present. Finally, Frederick broke the silence. "I did it. It's over. The danger has passed." He looked at her with something like regret. "And now I can go home, to Ashbourne Manor, with my sons." Gloria's heart cracked, but she forced herself to smile. "That's wonderful. They deserve to grow up in their real home." "Yes," Frederick said quietly. "They do."